doctors definitely told my parents, she's not even going to make it. She's too small. She's too early. We don't think she's going to make it. So it went from, we don't think she's going to make it to, oh, if she does make it, she's going to have problems.
Hello and welcome to Special Moms Africa, the podcast, real talk on special needs parenting. Now, my name is Obafeyi Kemi Luther, and I will be your lead host today on today's episode. But I'm not in the studio on my own. I am with my gorgeous, amazing Amazon friend, and I like to call her that, Tonya Falugi Ekeze.
That's right, sing it. Ekeze. Just like the way I like to sing. Obafeyi Kemi.
And today on the show, we'll be talking about cerebral palsy advocacy and self-advocacy. And we have one of my favorite people in the audience as our guest today, who'll be joining us, Tobiloba Ajayi, who is a disability management advocate and author. So Tobiloba has over 12 years experience working with various organizations in the disability management sector in different countries in the world. She holds a degree in law and was called to the Nigerian bar in 2008. She also holds a master's degree in international law, and she started by working on disability policy as a member of the Nigerian Vision 2020 policy drafting team, and went on to work with various NGOs in a quest to improve the lives of people with disabilities. In March of 2017, she launched the Let Cerebral Palsy Kids Learn Foundation, which promotes inclusive mainstream education for children with cerebral palsy in Nigeria. This was born out of a realization in 2016 during her Mandela Washington Fellowship professional development experience that children with cerebral palsy were being excluded from mainstream education by the school system in Nigeria. So today, the project has provided support for over 400 children and their families, and it has enabled about 95 of these children access to inclusive education. Each family gets access to continuous counseling, referrals, school placement support, and school readiness assessment. This project has trained over 500 teachers in its bid to address the knowledge and skill gap of mainstream classroom teachers to engage children with cerebral palsy in their classrooms. Tobiloba is a 4-time published author that believes strongly in the power of words to create change perception and reality. Hi, Tobiloba. Welcome to the show.
Hi, guys. It's so good to be here. Actually, it's quite a number of my favorite women in one room.
So first, there's two things we want to define before we start to delve in. Right. And then once we define them, you can say, is it okay? Is it right? Is it wrong?
Exactly. Okay. So we're going to define cerebral palsy, and we're going to also define self-advocacy. So cerebral palsy is defined as a group of disorders that affect a person's ability to move and maintain balance and posture.
Posture.
Cerebral CP is the most common motor disability in childhood. Cerebral means having to do with the brain, and palsy means weakness or problems with using the muscles. Cerebral palsy is caused by abnormal brain development or damage to the developing brain that affects a person's ability to control his or her muscles. So that's cerebral palsy. Then we also have the definition of self-advocate. The term self-advocacy, which means speaking up for oneself and one's interests, is used as a name for civil rights movements and mutual aid networks for disabled people. The term arose in the broader civil rights movement of the 1960s and 1970s, and is part of the disabilities rights movement. So Toby, we are so glad again to have you. And, one of the first things that we wanted to ask you, I've met you and you're such an amazing human being. And, I'm so happy to see you after so long. And, when did you first realize that, or should I say your parents, right? How did they first realize that you had cerebral palsy? And when did you first, begin to get an awareness of your diagnosis of cerebral palsy?
Wait, my parents knew that they were going to have problems by the time I was born. You see, when your baby is born at 29 weeks and weighs 1.1 kg, hello, newsflash, that baby is never supposed to get home. Okay, so yeah, I was that kid that was never supposed to make it home from the hospital in the first place. right?
Mm-hmm.
So the doctors definitely told my parents, she's not even going to make it. She's too small. She's too early. We don't think she's going to make it. So it went from we don't think she's going to make it to, oh, if she does make it, she's going to have problems. Like, you guys really don't want to be raising a child that's going to have multiple disabilities. This one will.
Mm.
But again, my parents have what we like to call in this generation coconut head. So
they don't listen.
They don't listen. They just don't listen. Because doctors told them, see, you already have 2 children. You do not need this one. Like, this is not what you need in your life right now. But no, I have coconut head. This work. So they said, look, God gave us this child. God did not tell us that this child is going to die. So yes, keep our child alive, but take care of our child. Okay. So by the time I was 20 months old and I couldn't sit up, couldn't use my hands, couldn't crawl, couldn't walk, all motor skills were just on hold. It was obvious that something was wrong. Even my illiterate great grandmother was telling my mom, something's wrong with this child. You need to take this child out of the hospital. So my mom takes me back and says, you know what, guys, you guys need to give me a diagnosis today or we're going to have a problem. Because you guys have been telling me all the while, oh, but you know your child's history now. The child was not supposed to make it home from yourself. Why you complain? Like,
wow,
woman, behave yourself. The next time she goes and she says, this child is slow, she's not meeting milestones, they'll say, is this not the same baby that was not supposed to leave this hospital? Like, what is the cause of your problem? Respect. So she kept quiet for like 20 months. At 20 months, she said she went back and she just told them, how do you do this place today? Or if you tell me exactly what's going on. So eventually, the doctors finally take her serious and they finally do and the thing with CP is it's not like you can test for it like that. So it's basically observational. The doctors finally did an observation, then looked at the history again and said, Mrs. Ajayi, you're right, this child has cerebral palsy. My mom just sighed because she's in the medical field, so she had that diagnosis and she knew what it meant.
Yeah.
So she just said, alright, it's okay, not a problem. Let's be going on. So she went home and my advisor said, she came back and said, well, Mr. Man, we have a problem. And we have entered what we will call today one chance. This one, there's no cure. This one I left and we can't cure. We can only manage it for the rest of our life. So, my parents knew by the time I was 20 months what they were getting into.
I think to just to cut in.
Yeah.
I mean, for you, it's so easy to tell this tale. You have a smile on your face, but obviously this was really intense at the time. But what stands out is the attitude of your parents. Like, just going for it, gung-ho, they wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
They said no, that there's so, and they're just continuing to push the persistence. And, it just feeds into what we consistently say is that, you keep going. And it's often parents like this who you see that the effect on the children, that's why we impress. You have to just try, do something, push, because nobody's going to do it for you as a parent. As the mother or father, you're the one first who is going to start pushing for this child. Before anybody outside is going to take you seriously, you have to be persistent, you have to be annoying. And it sounds like your parents really fit that.
Oh my goodness. I mean, you really need to meet my dad, then you'll understand, because I know people say that I'm very stubborn and I have a very big mouth.
Toby, we don't need to meet your dad because we can already hear from you speaking that you are a junior coconut head. So you are also very persistent and you're also very courageous and you just, go, with life. But I want to ask you, you've just said, you didn't answer how you...
Okay, so for me, what did my parents do? So what they did that I always applaud is that, so I think unconsciously, they just agreed, we're not hiding anything in this house. Everything that is going on, we're going to tell everybody. But you see, my mother was a typical Nigerian mother. She does not like to have difficult conversations. This is not hard. Question that this one be asking me question. I agree. See, my coconut did not succeed. When even though I couldn't walk, I could talk, and my mouth has always been cutting words. So my mom was like, "But this one is allowed to cause all your sex in my house." And another thing they did was they got me onto reading very, very early. My dad was somebody who always said, okay, I'll try not to lose too much in translation. But basically, they say this in Yoruba to me all the time. Your muscles are impaired, but your brain is not.
Say it in Yoruba.
So Yoruba.
Okay, so I was saying to it this way. My mom would say, look, I don't do a real job.
Your head is not broken.
So, so every step of the day, my mom, my dad would say, look, my child may be, physically impaired, but she's not intellectually impaired. So I'm not going to sacrifice her intellect on the altar of our muscles. So very early on, they introduced me to education, to reading. So I could read at like third grade level, but by the time I was like 5 or 6. My mom got this, there's this embryology textbook that medical students use. It's called The Developing Human. Now there's a picture version that basically shows like all of the development stages of like babies in the womb and stuff. So my mom had that book from nursing school. So she takes the book and she leaves it on my bedside. Now she knows that I will read anything, right? So she leaves it on my bedside. She knows I'll read it. I read it, and then I take it back to her, and I'm like, I just finished reading this book. So she was like, okay, do you have any questions? And I was like, not really. She was like, okay, but let me just show you what it looks like when it came out of my tummy. So she then does the book to, I think, 28 weeks or something. And then she shows me, and then she says, oh, so these were all the things that were developed, and these were all the things that were not. And because of the fact that all of these things were not developed, so they came out early, so you ended up with this thing called cerebral palsy, and that's why you can't use your hands, you can't use your legs. Makes sense, right? Okay, so, well, I didn't even bother to ask whether we could cure it. I don't think I even asked at the time if we could cure it or not. I just said, okay, thanks, and that was it. Like, that was all. And that was how I knew. So I knew by the time I was 6 what I had, what it meant, how I had it. So if I go to school and people ask me, why do you walk like that? Like how kids ask questions. Why do you walk like that? I just give them a crash course.
We've just had this. Amazing.
This very interesting crash course is this very interesting way that they now feel like it's cool.
Yes.
So it kind of now sounds cool. So it's not really a bad thing anymore. It's just like something really cool that happened to her and didn't happen to anybody else in the class. So kind of went around class like a cool story. So you get like you go to our class, it's a cool story, it's fun, it's interesting, and that's how I basically make my life make sense.
So I love the story that you just gave because it shows that your parents preparing you and giving you the right tools for you to go out in the world and also be able to confidently talk to people about what was wrong with you without you having a chip on your shoulder, right? That is amazing. Were you going to?
So there's something that I wanted to pull out of what you said, Toby, which was about the fact that, disability and special needs comes in different forms. And unfortunately, what you see happen is that people with disabilities that don't have the learning or cognitive issues are still lumped into that. So someone will see someone who has a physical disability and assume that they also have a cognitive developmental and so treats them like that. And it's also trying to explain to them that, hey, I still got a brain. I'm functioning. I'm okay. I understand so people also need to see people like Toby to understand the different formats, the different forms that disabilities present themselves, and not just to assume that that people don't have mind when they do.
The saying is just fantastic, babe, because she shared real. Exactly that, because exactly your Oreo daru.
So she would say to me, and then she followed it at the older end part. She actually would follow it up to say something like, use your brain to compensate for the things your muscles can't.
What an amazing quote. And we're definitely going to use that, Tobiloba. But I wanted to ask you, have you and your family, have you faced any discriminations because of your cerebral palsy? Cerebral palsy.
How many do you want? How many examples do you want?
Oh, wow.
2.
Take a number. I think that, for discrimination, where do I start? Pretty much started the minute you show up in society. You're discriminated against. When I was younger, it was my parents' fault, actually. it wasn't really my fault when I was younger. People just used to ask them what they were looking at, things like that. Yoruba people are very interested.
What they were looking at.
But as I got older, then the discrimination became more overt. When I remember people would say to me in school, like, what are you doing here? I always say that I've spent so much of my life trying to consistently defending my right to exist in space. So I have consistently defended my right to exist in space. I remember going into a university entrance interview, and there were 5 men. I will never forget this. And I remember getting into the room. I had passed the written test, and this was supposed to be an oral interview because there's something about like being the right fit for the school kind of thing. And the men were sitting down, so I walked in, and CP is very obvious, right? So they see it, and they tell me to sit down, and they basically say to me, "We honestly don't think you should come here. This school is not made for people like you."
Wow! And they just said that overtly, plain as day, to your face.
Like plain as day, nothing hidden to my face, like it's not made for people like you. And I'm like, "Oh, watch me last 5 years." And that was.
What was this in Nigeria?
Yes, this was in Nigeria.
Wow.
This was in wow. So, and this was was a precursor of what to come. In my entire first year, I remember that the first week of my first week, that's the orientation week, right? If I came out of my room to walk, I would like to go to like the class area where the orientation stuff was taking place. Girls would jump their hostels and line the streets to stare and run commentary on my life suits. And eventually, 1 or 2 of them actually gathered the liver, so to speak, to ask me questions. And one of them just said, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "The same thing you're doing here, getting an education." And she goes, "Your parents were very wicked people, because how can they see you like this?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's how much you know, so that's fine." I'm like, "That's how much you know, so that's fine." I mean, so I've constantly defended my right to exist in places. I remember NYSC was another drama. I mean, I went to the East itself, and oh Lord, it's that from bus drivers to fellow coppers to even camp coordinators. I got it every step of the way. People just saying you don't belong here. People like you should not exist here. And to your face, I remember a bus driver saying to me and my friend was with me. We're trying to get to a bus, and he said in Igbo, I don't understand Igbo, but my friend does. That he was telling his conductor, don't let them in the bus before they come and die here. My friend was
Toby,
crying about it.
Toby,
yeah.
So this is like a daily basis discrimination that you've been facing since you were younger. Yeah. What strategies have you learnt? What have you put in place? Do you even bother? Do you ignore it? What do you do? Because this is day to day and it's exhausting. So I'm sure you found a way to navigate it.
I guess you decide who you answer. So some people are being deliberately ignorant. I can't help it. I can't help deliberate ignorance. That's your problem. Can't do it. But if someone is genuinely ignorant or genuinely curious, then I consider it a learning. And then I kind of teach you. So, for instance, if a child says, "See that auntie working," now that's a child see that auntie working for you. That's a curious child. It's time to have a conversation about how some people, some people's bodies and brains develop differently. It's kind of like a light switch. I have this whole child-friendly analogy that I use that children know, right? So if it's that, but when there is an adult, or for instance, religious leaders who are just basically looking for demon that they want to cast out.
That's going to be an episode.
Writing that.
Come on, like it's okay.
Definitely.
Let's just,
Toby, let's just keep
you
have basically shown us, from your parents, the way that they've given you confidence, from you, the way you handle situations, that you've actually been able to face discrimination. You've been able to face a lot of the issues that life has thrown at you. So I want to ask you, what are Tobiloba's plans for the future? And what impact are you planning on having on, your world, the world of CP, in this space that you're in? What are the plans that you have for the future?
So basically, I try not to plan too far ahead because just life throws curveballs. So, my goal really, like I always say, my job will be done when inclusive education on a right instead of an exception. Right? So
inclusive education is a right, not an exception.
So I'm going to do my job still when we get there. How soon will we get there? I don't have that answer, but we're going to just keep working. And so, another thing that I'm trying to do is also to document my own experiences to help other parents and other young people with cerebral palsy navigate this journey. Because again, like I always say, I mean, I've suffered enough. The next generation should not have suffered.
Yeah.
There are some glass ceilings that will be broken, so that other people can just walk through. And they shouldn't even be walking through on glass. I mean, we should have swept the glass.
Yeah. Well done.
Because there's no need. There's no need.
I understand.
So, is it possible to navigate the Nigerian education system without killing yourself? Yes. Will you break a few heads into it? It's possible.
Most possible.
It's just basically, for me, that's it. It's basically making this journey easier for the next generation.
For the next
that's
generation.
That I'm just going to
fantastic.
Continue to work on and continue to work on making sure that inclusive education is accessible.
Thank you so much, Toby. It's such a, wonderful goal to have. And we've come to the part of the show that we call the honest truth. Now, the honest truth is where we ask our wonderful guests like yourself something honestly from the bottom of your heart that you've never shared with anyone before about your journey with cerebral palsy. So the honest truth, something that goes in your head, you've never said out loud before. What is Tobiloba Ajayi's honest truth?
And you have 1 minute to do it.
And you have 1 minute to do it.
First of all, I'm trying to figure out if there's something I've not even shared, right?
True.
But I think that this is the part that, because I share everything, like, there's nothing to hide. This journey is hard. There's no need to be, what are we forming for? There's no time. But there's one thing I actually need to point out, that cerebral palsy wreaks havoc on mental health. Like, it wreaks havoc on mental health. So for those who know me and who's heard me share this before, I did end up being clinically depressed and suicidal at some point in my journey.
Wow.
So it's not all
it's not all roses, and you're able to share that.
No, yes, I'm able to share. Look, campaign types. Mental health and cerebral palsy. Like the research even shows is that people with cerebral palsy are 4 times more likely to experience depression than the general population. So yes, I mean, we're on that table. Suicidal ideations, suicidal attempts, mental health clinics, medication, psychotherapy, the whole works. 2 years of my life that I can't get back.
Well, I just think that it really kind of highlights another aspect of the special needs, and you've tapped into something there, and we do have an episode or 2 dedicated to the mental health and special needs, because there's 2 aspects, because statistically shown that parents of special needs children are also likely to struggle with mental health, but also those who are the special needs people themselves. For example, I've got statistics on Down syndrome. You've told statistics on CP, and that they are people with special needs do struggle more with mental health. And I don't think that's a genetic thing, and that's part of, part and parcel of it. But I think it's just because of how society is, how culture is, how life is, If you're treated as a 2nd or 3rd class citizen, how does that play on your mind? If you're kept and locked up at home, how does that play on your mind? These things don't spring up from nowhere. There's a causal relation, and it's something that really has to be looked at. And while everybody suffers from periods of struggle with their mental health, it's really important to identify it in the case of people with special needs, so that can be an aspect of therapy or part of the aspect of their care. Because like you, I believe that people with special needs have a right to thrive. They have a place in society. They should be employed. They should be married. They should be allowed to have children, just like anybody else.
A right to their space.
You know, a right to their space. And that includes mental health.
Yeah.
So I really just give you kudos for sharing that. That's a big thing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tobiloba. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. And we really would love to have you again some other time. We'd like to say a big thank you to Tobiloba Ajayi for sharing her time with us. I know that it might be difficult sometimes to get across with all the technological issues that we've had, but thank you so much. Toby, can you share your handle where we can find you on social media?
Right, so I'm at Tobiloba Ajayi for my personal handle and at Let's CP Kids Learn for the organization.
Let's CP Kids Learn.
Love that.
Kids Learn.
Yes, organization.
And Tobiloba Ajayi,
Fantastic. Okay. So I'd also like to thank my beautiful co-host, Tonya Falugi.
And you can find me at Simone's Oasis at Tonya_F.
Fantastic. And I am Obafe Kemi Luther. And you can find me on Obafekemi_Luther on Instagram and on Facebook and all other social media platforms. And you can also find our social media handle for Special Mums Africa on Instagram at Special Mums Africa. And we hope that you'll join us next time on Special Mums Africa, where we have real talk on special needs parenting. Until then, goodbye. Tonya. Bye. For sponsorship enquiries, please contact specialmomsafrica@gmail.com.